at this school, it's just like everyone you like, one out of like every four people you come across is somehow like gender variant. And like there's so many more like the stereotypical blue hair with pronouns, you know.
Yep. Yep.
Like I thought that's kind of a joke back at my other college, and now I see them every day.
You see them every. No, it's actually the uniform. Hey everybody, I caught myself another one, but today is kind of special because this person is going to stay off camera and just be an audio recording because they I will ask them, but I think that it's just more of a space that they don't want to have any backlash because we're in that space now with this community. But that being said, I appreciate everybody always watching the channel, and I'm able to bring these amazing guests on because of you, and you're liking and subscribing and commenting. It's all really just helping the trajectory of this channel really take a hold, and I see it, and I can't do it without you. So again, I appreciate everybody watching and helping me bring these amazing guests on, and these guests really put themselves in these positions because they want to see change as well as I do, and we want to be honest about what's going on here. And these voices are the voices that don't necessarily get the platforms that I'm trying to give here. So with that, we have Im today. So Im, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll move forward.
Yeah, so I'm going to give a quick little introduction on myself. I'm going to try to keep it as like vague, but I'm a 21. I'm a college student at a liberal Western liberal arts college, very liberal area. I am a transgender man. I've been transitioning for the last 3 years. Kind of realized like ever since high school, I was kind of really deep in the closet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just been noticing that what I wanted to talk about today is just all this like radical queer theory that is going on in like what they teach in schools. Because it's like the college I go to has a really like big gender studies program. Like they have a whole gender studies degree that you can get, which I don't know what you do with that. But
I was just going to ask you that, a gender studies degree. I mean, I think they used to have gender studies class, which is important, but I don't remember there being a degree.
It's a whole degree, and I was actually doing some research. Only job I could find that related to that degree is teaching other people. It's like being a professor in that, and it's like, what?
There's something really weird about that, first off. So that sounds kind of like we're recruiting people to do this job to get more people to do this job that does nothing.
I did have to take a couple of those classes for the general ed, like general studies, even though my major is engineering. I had to get my humanities out of the way. And because one of the classes I took was transgender studies, and I thought, oh, I'm trans, that should be easy, eh? But it was absolutely bonkers. And I have some notes here of like what I've written down from
Great.
what I observed in that class. So, and this is also, I took another class too, Gender and Women's Studies, Intro to Gender and Women's Studies. And this was, I'm going to kind of combine both of these classes and all the wild shit I've seen.
Wow. Wow.
So we discussed.
So wait a minute. Let me just ask you this, buddy. So now gender. So it used to be a women's studies class, and then gender studies. So now they put gender studies and women's together.
Yes, gender and women's studies.
That's very interesting to me.
It's like the intro course and to it.
Why is women separate? So I guess my question is, why isn't it just gender studies? Why is women's studies? Because women is also a gender, is it?
Yeah,
not?
I think definitely from what I picked up from that class is they want to exclude men. Like,
wow.
Straight up in that class, I remember is like our professor asked us, okay, we were talking about systems of power, so like the isms like racism, sexism. It's like, who holds the power in society? And it's like, we're not going to be PC here, just say it.
Yeah.
And then she wanted us to say cishet white men.
Boring. Come on, man.
In that class, I actually had to out myself as trans because I was the only like white guy in the class.
Wow.
So I was like, hey, I'm trans. Don't. So I kind of did that for my little bit of my safety, but
Yeah, I get
So we
it.
discussed in that class social constructs, and when the professor asked for some examples, the girl with the blue buzz cut says gender, and the professor says great answer, and wrote that on the board. That was one of the funny moments. As I was like, so they're basically teaching gender is a social construct, and other social constructs are religion, money, race, sexuality, and a couple other things that I forgot.
Wow.
But it's kind of everything.
Sexuality is a social construct?
Yes,
No, it isn't. Is it? No, it
that's
isn't.
what they're
It's
teaching. That's what they're trying to teach.
that, but that's actually kind of homophobic on some level.
Exactly. Um,
Wow.
they
Wow.
I mean they even said I tried like I have this whole big list here and it kind of gets worse as you go along, but um we discussed sex versus gender, and I shit you not, they said that the doctors assign your sex without your permission based on what they think you look like, even though there are over like a dozen sexes.
My God, they're
And
losing their
I
minds.
was like confused, and I was like, I asked, how are there over a dozen sexes? And she said, well, there's like X, you can have just an X chromosome. You have XXY or XYY chromosomes. And it's like, those are
That
disorders.
those are that's called intersex. And you know, I have intersex friends who are very mad about being lumped into trans. They're two
Yeah,
different things. Wow. They're saying that. And so everybody who's listening right now, listen to M what they're saying, because what he's saying is that this is being taught to a generation of people without, on some level, our knowledge. If you didn't tell me this, I wouldn't know this was being taught at school. Do you know
yeah,
that?
this is the pants analogy. So the pants analogy is so sex is like what's in your pants, like how you were born. Now
Mhm.
gender is so I'm trying to get it straight because she had my professor gender identity and gender ID, like gender expression. So gender identity was the type of pants that you wore. That's your gender identity. And your gender
Okay.
expression is how you decorated your pants. And that's how they're describing gender, is like how you decorate, how you show off. I put this in quotations because she said this verbatim, but it's how you gender is how you express is an act on how you express yourself. That's what I told you over Instagram
Wow.
was gender is that was on my final, because we had to, for our final, we had to match words to the definitions, and one of the definitions was gender, and the definition that correlated with that was an act you put on to express yourself, and that's how they're
Wow.
teaching what gender is.
Wow. Well, this is why so many young people are sort of confused about who they are on
Yeah.
some level, because this is very confusing to me, a 60-year-old. I know who I am. If I
I
went to those,
yeah, I have so many, I've seen so many people in my age that are just, it's just wild what they say they are. And as I know this one person, we used to be friends, but we kind of stopped talking.
Mhm.
Uh she's completely female presenting,
Mhm.
but says that she is trans because she doesn't identify fully as a female. Her pronouns are she, they, even though she's completely female presenting, maybe a little tomboyish.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I know so many non-binary people
Yeah.
who say they're non-binary, with their long hair, especially the dyed hair. You see all the,
Yeah.
like, I think I know like 3 people with long pink hair that say
Yeah.
they're non-binary. Then when they talk to me, they're like, "Why do people not see me as non-binary?" And I just have to hold my tongue. I can't say you don't
I know.
look. Yeah, it's like,
So what does a non I guess I'm going to ask you this question. You know the answer. What does a non-binary person look like?
honestly, what I've noticed for many non-binary people is they all fall into one of 2 categories. They're
Okay.
either trans people that are like kind of in denial about being trans, because I actually like used
Okay.
to I kind of fell into this cult a little bit. I
Yeah.
identified as non-binary for like a month because I was
Mhm.
still figuring out who I was,
Sure.
and I realized, oh, I just need to take the leap. I can't be ashamed to say I'm a man. And I've known so many people, like a lot of non-binary people have just kind of used that as like a gateway to
Yeah.
fully
I agree.
transition.
I agree.
It's either they
Yeah.
are using that as a gateway,
Yeah.
or they're just cis and want to be special.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
Totally.
I can almost every non-binary person I've come across, whether that be from like, I even have a non-binary cousin, it kind of falls into one of those two categories, you know?
Right. Right. So
And like,
that's what I always say. Non-binary is a choice. Like I did not, and nor did you choose this. We have a disorder called,
right.
trans. So I don't know how you actually identify, but if you're
Yeah, I
trans, you have
identify as transsexual, I
that.
have gender dysphoria.
That's the difference between us and them. We're not choosing this. We have it, and they're choosing. Their choice is to be gender nonconforming or non-binary. So that's why I really don't understand how it's gotten lumped in as trans. Non-binary isn't trans. It's an
It's because
identity
they
choice.
say that they are not cis. They say that they
As if
say that
cis is a bad thing.
they're using different pronouns than the ones that would be typically like they them. I had the TA for my gender studies class uses exclusively Zer pronouns, but also
So
completely femme presenting.
yeah, it's exhausting. It's this whole thing. Look, if it was just about pronouns and kids are playing around with hair color and clothes, who cares, right? I mean, but it's not. It's in some level, everything you've already told me in like the first 10 minutes of our interview is so much of indoctrination. That's how I see it as
Right.
an
Because
elder.
I before I so when I was a kid, my parents, it took me a while to realize I was trans because
Mm,
I was kind of that stage of denial. But I was talking to my parents recently, and they said, "Oh, we figured you'd either grow up to be a butch lesbian or trans." And I was like, "Why didn't you guys let me know?" But
Parents
they,
know.
yeah, my parents knew, and I was always just thought I was always told that I was a tomboy, you know. And
Hmm.
now it
That's
seems
right.
like the tomboys and the butches are dying out, and
Yeah,
like every
it's so
like
weird.
it's
Sorry.
more of like how my partner describes it is how like the left has always been pushing for like, oh, it doesn't matter what clothes you wear, like you can be a female and wear men's clothes, or you can be a man and wear a dress. But then now they're also doing, oh, if you don't fit into all these stereotypes, you're non-binary or you're trans.
Very dangerous. That's
it's,
dangerous behavior right there.
it's demedicalizing this issue.
That's right.
And
That's
like
right.
I it was so like I was figuring out myself, like started like trying to figure out my identity right at this
Right.
start of this like whole non-binary, like super queer, like a million identities thing. And it took me a while to kind of like, I tried to like just, I was in that state of like, oh, I guess I'm just a tomboy, you know, I'm just a tomboy. Then like I went to college, I lived in a girls' dorm for 1 year, and I realized, oh, this isn't normal, or
Mm,
what these feelings I have about my gender isn't normal, because I just thought they were, because I didn't hang around normal people.
hmm.
When I went to
That's right.
college, I hung around some normal girls, and that's when I kind of realized, and I went to my psychiatrist, I went to a gender therapist, and that's when I kind of realized that, oh, this is like a thing. And I just now know people that change their gender on the snap of a finger. Like,
So tell me about your school. So you were in the girls' dorm. Did you move when you started to did you start to transition at this
so
school?
I went to two different colleges.
Okay.
The first college I went to was a very rigorous engineering school, because I wasn't, but as a freshman, you're required to be in a dorm, and I was just like, oh, I'll put these feelings aside.
Mm,
I'll just put my gender aside. I'll see where it takes me. And then for my first year, I lived in the girls' dormitory. And then right after that, I was like, nope, I figured out who I was. And I moved in with one of my friends who's a butch lesbian, and we each had our own room, and because we had
mhm,
like it was a fine arrangement. And then
mhm,
I decided to transfer schools because now I'm pursuing a passion in music and music
mhm.
technology
Great.
rather than just straight up engineering. So,
Hmm.
but now that I've gone from that more conservative school, that more like engineering, conservative, logic based school, to
Hmm.
like a liberal arts, everyone is like, it's a much different environment. It kind of gave me like a little bit of a
Yeah.
culture shock.
Tell me about that. Like you mean because it was talking about different, so the conservative school, do you find was more focused on your education,
It
where
was more focused on our education, and like there were still a lot of people who were trans and like
Mhm.
gay, but they were more focused on their education. They seemed like more like they were the ones that had like gender dysphoria, and like I said, I knew some non-binary people there, but they ended up fully transitioning to the opposite sex.
Mhm.
And then now that this school is just like everyone, you like one out of like every four people you come across is somehow like gender variant. And like there's so many more like the stereotypical blue hair with pronouns, you know.
Yep. Yep.
Like I thought that's kind of a joke back at my other college, and now I see them every day.
You see them every no, it's actually the uniform. It's kind of like
Yeah.
a uniform, because you don't need anything to do this, right? You don't need a diagnosis. You don't need anything. You could just say I'm trans, and you could just say I'm non-binary. That's why it's so different. These people are choosing to live in this space. So it seems like a lot. Like, how many would you say in your specific, maybe your year, are identifying as non-binary or trans or some form of that?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I've seen
Right.
like research done about like it's like one out of every five people in like my age is like LGBT somehow.
Oh my God. That's not right. That's not real.
Yeah. And like
No way.
my partner, I'm a so I'm bisexual. I'm attracted to both men and women. My
Hmm.
partner is a cis man, but
Hmm.
he didn't want to. I'm not mentioning his name or anything, and if you
No,
want to
don't.
let me know,
Yeah.
I can even.
Yeah.
But he's
No.
like he's kept it so hidden that he's queer because he wants to be seen more as normal. Like he
Hmm.
wants to.
Hmm.
He doesn't see it as like the main part of his personality, you know.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's what we sort of all have done in this world. We just want, like, for me, I always say I want to coexist. I want to be in the world with everybody. I
That's
don't.
why I think the main
Yeah.
difference is between like people in my generation
Yeah.
and like older, like kind of
Yeah.
is it depends on how you make being like trans or gay your personality. I try to put it to the side. I try to like have other parts of my personality, like oh, I love playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
I love music. I'm a musician. But
Mhm.
other people, it seems like their only personality trait is that they're queer.
That's right. That's right. So why do you think that is? Do you have any, like,
It's
why
a
is
need for attention. People,
okay?
I know that people my age, like there's always been a movement that I've noticed. And because my sister is 5 years older than me, have another sister even older than that, and I've kind of
Mhm.
seen like when they were in high school, like they've told me about like the different movements that like are what I
Mhm.
want attention movements. You know,
That's right.
it was like emo, like there's the emo, like a bunch of emo people. That was
Mhm.
like the I'm different movement.
Mhm.
I remember back then, like that was my sisters in high school. Like people pretended to have depression. People would say,
Wow.
"Oh, I'm so depressed,"
Wow. So they could
and
have
I think that
sympathy.
kind of transition now that kind of that got boring to people. Now they're kind of taking over gender dysphoria. And I've kind of already seen the next wave of this starting, and it's people saying that they have autism and like
You've got to be kidding me. Are
yes,
you?
I know this one person who is self-diagnosed with multiple personality disorder because she says it feels like she has five different people in her head talking at once. Like that's how it's like. Well, it's like different aspects of your. That's normal. Like different aspects of your personality could like debate in your head about decisions. You know,
That's right. That's right. That's
like
right.
if I don't, for example, if I want to go buy something, I may like have the side of me that says, "Oh, you should buy this," another side that says, "Oh, you shouldn't."
That's right.
That's normal, and that isn't that disorder. That's
Nope.
completely different.
Well, I think one of the things that happened was we created this thing called self ID, and that anyone could identify whatever they want. That was the biggest mistake this community has ever done, because that opened the door for this type of stuff, for people to start self identifying with some sort of disorders like autism, or what is that?
borderline
disassociative,
or multiple personality disorder.
multiple personality disorder, all of these things, which you see all the time on, right? TikTok is that space that's really pushing a lot of this
Yeah,
stuff
and
that I
like I
see.
said, it's even not new. It was back when I was in middle school. It was depression. People self-identified with depression, and
Wow.
that was the cool. That was the, oh, I'm so edgy. I'm so different. I have depression.
Is that the emo crowd?
Yeah,
Yeah, right, right. I mean, there's always been, right? When I was in school, it was punk rock in the 80s and 70s. We did punk, the ones who were outcasted, like myself, I didn't fit in, so I was a punk rocker, or we had what was called new wave. Like, there's always
yeah.
groups that are just, not the popular jocks or cheerleaders or whatever, right? It's that, so that's always been there. But what I could see that's different to me is now this is pushing forward to things like that, like disorders. We never said we had a disorder. In fact, we kind of would have pushed against that. But also, to me, the dangerous part is it's also self-IDing as trans, which means you're able to get testosterone or surgery, right?
Right.
Without any diagnosis.
Yeah, because I've just seen. I've One of the main arguments I've seen for letting people self ID is that there's an old study that was done that was like, oh, 90, like some high number of trans people don't regret transitioning. It's like, well, that was before self identification. That was like in your era.
That's right. Guess
And it's like,
why? Guess why in my era?
because it wasn't as popular. It wasn't like seen as a trend.
And also, we had to go through a whole system, my friend. I had to go through years of therapy before they would even let me touch testosterone or even get a top surgery. Top surgery was considered something very sacred on some level, and you had to go
Yeah,
through a whole system. I've never looked back, that 30 years of transition, because I did go through an actual safe. That's why we have detransitioners today.
and also I think I said I kind of figured out I kind of started questioning myself, like, am I trans?
Mm,
What is my identity in like high
mm,
school? But then that's
right.
kind of why I didn't come out until like my second year of college. Was like I was like, I don't want to be seen as a trender. I don't want to fall into this act of being a trender
Mhm.
because I don't want to end up detransitioning. I don't know if this is right for me. But after 2 years of testosterone and like being transitioning, I've never felt happier. It's like
That's
I felt
awesome.
so much better mentally,
That's
and
awesome. Yeah, I know. I'm. Me and you are the same. I feel you, friend. I know
I
that.
feel like I would have kind of been in like your situation too if this
Mm.
wasn't a trend where I wouldn't have realized until I was like later in my life. Like,
Right, and there's pros and cons to what just happened to you. The pro is you waited, right? So which is really great because you did make the choice later on, and you're solid in it. And I really feel like you'll probably never look back. But if you would have gotten caught into what's happening today, you might have detransitioned because you might not have taken the time to think about it and then said, "Oops, I'm actually not trans," which is what's happening now because anybody can be trans.
yeah, and
Weird. It's
every
weird.
and then there's people, like I said, the people making this whole thing about, oh, I'm non-binary, I go by they them, this is my new name, kind of like
Yeah,
trying to mimic being trans, but
that's right. That's
not
right.
fully. They don't want to be a man, they just want to be different.
They don't want to commit to what you and I are committing to. And that's why we have these conversations, because I want people to see the difference between you and I and the people who are choosing non-binary. And tomorrow they can not choose it and go back to living in the cisgender world. And, we're the ones who are going to clean up the mess
The
they're
mess,
making.
yeah.
Yeah, that they are. And so tell me a little bit about your childhood. Could you? I want to know, like, where you don't have to say specifically where you grew up,
Yeah,
but
so
was
I
yeah.
I grew up like pretty rural area. I grew up in the
Okay.
so I lived for 10 years in the deep south, and then I
Okay.
moved up to like I call it Mormon territory, like in the
Mhm.
Utah, Idaho,
Okay.
Montana area for four
Mhm.
years. Then I moved out to the west in the state that I currently live in, and I've been
Okay.
here since. But
Okay.
so I was pretty sheltered growing up. I was an innocent child, I
Yeah.
didn't know what lesbian was until in eighth grade. It was my
Right.
little
That's
cousin who
great.
told me what lesbian meant, and I was like, oh.
Okay.
But yeah, and I was pretty sheltered. I didn't know, like, it
Mhm.
was until high school I figured it was like I learned about being transgender, and even then I was like, oh, I wish I was transgender because people transgender men get to become men, and I wish I could become a man. And it's like,
Mhm.
wait, I look back on that a few years later and I'm like, oh my God. But no, like I said, as a kid, I was like I said, my parents told me that they either thought I was going to grow up to be a butch lesbian or a transgender, and I talked to them about it, and they said they didn't want to do anything. They wanted me to figure it out, and like I
So
would have
great.
like
Wow.
as every other little girl would dress up as a princess. I loved my Bob the Builder outfit,
Right on.
and I was always like I always felt more comfortable like presenting masculine, and then when puberty hit, like that's when I started like showing symptoms of depression and
Mhm,
anxiety, and
mhm.
I even then like I was afraid to go get diagnosed with those too because I knew those were a trend. That was like the end of that era, and I was like, oh, I don't want
Mhm,
to get misdiagnosed with as
mhm,
this, but depression runs in my family,
mhm. Sure.
and
Yeah.
so my childhood was pretty good, and like I was just sheltered, and that's why it's like high school when I first learned what being transgender meant, and then when I did some more looking into it, I was like, wait, this kind of fits,
Were
with
there a
gender.
lot of kids in your school that identified as trans?
There was a lot of non-binary people. There's a lot of
Mhm,
that's why like I was still like questioning for such a long time, and like I
mhm,
actually was like I I I remember I'd go to the counselor's office and I'd borrow her DSM-5 and read the gender dysphoria
mhm.
entry and see how well it fit. And it's like I even got to go to a gender therapist when I was in high school, but that
Wow.
it was then like said when I got to college, I was like, I'm going to this really prestigious engineering school. I'm going
Mhm,
to kind of put my this aside for a little bit. I'll
mhm,
see how important this is to me in my engineering. Like I wanted to
mhm.
focus on school,
Good for
and that's
you.
what I thought I could do is I could put it aside. But then like it kind of came, I
Yeah.
like put it away. Then it like came crashing out at me like as soon as I
Yeah.
moved into that girl's dormitory.
But that's your dysphoria. That's how we know
Oh
you have
yeah,
actual
I was
dysphoria.
I was
Yeah.
talking about like I mentioned like I remember in high school I bought my first binder and I mentioned that and they're like, wait, one of the girls was like, wait, why did you buy a binder? Like, wait,
Ah,
you guys don't like wearing binders or like it doesn't make you feel good?
right.
And like I didn't know what was normal. So I was like, oh,
Well, you
wait.
were sort of flying by your on your own, which I actually think is really important because you kind of got to figure this out on your own. It doesn't sound like you had a lot of peer pressure.
Yeah, I tried my peer pressure came with like I identified as like asexual for a while
Mhm,
and like
mhm.
just to kind of like be like because there's a million different sexualities people identified as. I knew like one guy he identified as things like I think it was omnisexual. He said he was attracted to everybody but women.
I mean, come on, man.
And then like
Everybody, but
he eventually came out as gay, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
that
there you go.
I saw
There
where
you
that
go.
was going.
I mean, a lot of this, that's what I keep saying. Like a lot of these young people who are identifying as non-binary and trans, they're dealing with something. Something's going on there that they need to sort of address. I don't necessarily think it is gender. That's why they're not taking our route. They're taking this sort of
Like
less intrusive thing.
it's more of like I want to be different, like
Yeah, that's right. I
the
believe
dyed
that.
hair, the like
That's right. So let
I
me
just
ask you this. Did you find that a lot of the non-binary identified people, um, what was their sexuality? So who are they attracted
pansexual,
to? Sorry?
pansexual.
That's the other thing that's new, right? Pansexual means that you're attracted to everyone. Is that what that
I
means?
honestly think it's just like bisexual, but
That's right.
it's like you're bisexual, but you want to be special.
So do you think that these people really are, or do you think that they're also claiming that to be special?
I know some people who it really depends on the person. Like I know some people who actually like seem like they are more um like actually bisexual, but other people's like, oh, I'm pansexual, but I've only dated men and like
So I kind of feel like that label is also something that sort of puts you into this newer, cooler space, right? If you claim non-binary pansexual, you're like in the cool
the
group.
cool. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
if I can like name like I know like 5 non-binary pansexuals just off the top of my head, you know.
Wow. Wow.
And
I
these are
mean,
all people I know in person, like not online, like people
and
I've
these
met.
are all adults, right? These are all people that go to your
These are all
university.
adults, like
Hmm.
these all are people that go to my university
Hmm.
at like
Hmm.
non-binary pansexualness. Like, well,
And
it's kind of
the
like
same age group as you, 21 or so.
uh like 18 to 20, 18 to
Okay.
25 ish, like
18 to
that big
25.
range.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay. I mean, at that range, you are kind of looking for things start to sort of, you experiment with sexuality, or you start thinking. I mean, I think that's very
It was
normal.
even worse in high school. Like high
Right.
school, I was a band kid. I was a band and
Okay.
theater kid, so
Okay.
I was with all the. That's where all the queers were, because like that's
Right. Of always, dude, that's been like that
the
forever.
theater, the theater group, you know, the theater kids. But there were so many like non-binary theater kids, and so many like people that were like, oh, I'm. But you couldn't like, I couldn't bring up how like I wouldn't have like conversations with them about this, or else they'd call me a bigot. Like I said, the only people I've been able to talk to this about in person are like cis het people, because
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
have this like, because
Right.
I feel like if you're queer, especially my age, you're kind of forced into being accepting of everyone.
Oh, that's a very powerful statement. Yeah, you're right. Or you get called a bigot, or
Like I
a
said, that's why I'm doing this
transphobe.
anonymously, because I
No,
have friends who are like people I like. If the people at my college found out that I like think this way, I'd be shunned. You know.
I know. You're not the first person I've interviewed like this, my friend. I mean, I have, I think, 3 other interviews with young people at universities, very always liberal arts colleges, and it's like they always tell me it feels like a social contagion at school. Like one kid was in a dorm, and he's a or now it's a she detransitioned female to male, and she lived in the dorm of females, but half the dorm was trans men. Half.
I lived in the dorm of so in my female dorm there are 8 people. Only 2 of them were cishet.
Wow. You see? So on some level, it feels kind of like a social contagion to me. It
But
does.
if you look at the men's dorm, you know, there was only 2 people in that ended up being queer. You know,
Thank you for
because
saying that. Thank you for saying that. That
like I
that
had a yeah I
yep.
had a
Yep.
like the men's dorm and the women's dorm both had 8 people.
Okay.
It was like because we lived in suite style dorms, so we had
Okay.
like a big common living room, and our rooms were around that. But we
Yep.
were on the same floor as the men's dorm. The men's
Yep.
dorm, there's one person who ended up transitioning to female a couple years later, and then one bisexual in the men's dorm.
Wow.
While in the
That
women's dorm, there was me, who I'm. There's me because, like I said, I was just trying.
uh,
I didn't know what to
uh,
do. Then
uh,
there's a lesbian and like 3 like okay, me, a lesbian, and then 4 bisexuals.
wow. That's so fat. No, no other trans identifying.
There was one. There was, like I said, that there was a there was
Oh,
someone who was
uh-huh.
said that
But
she
I
was a
hear what you're
gender
saying.
male.
This LGBT space was very prevalent within the woman's space, but not so much. And that's what I keep saying. Most of the kids that are transitioning, and I'm going to call you a kid because I'm 60
Yeah,
and
I
I can.
understand.
But that being, I mean, I'm probably as old as your dad. But that being said, I'm probably older than your dad. But that being said, I do notice that it's really a very female focused space. Most of the people that are transitioning are young girls. Do you not notice that?
Yeah, I've noticed that, and all the non like I've most of the non I've only met 2 people, 2 non-binary people that were assigned male at birth, but then they ended up transitioning to female.
Mhm.
While
Mhm.
all other non-binary people I know are assigned female at birth.
Wow. I mean, there's something going on that is not, this is why I question it, my friend, because it's not a level playing field. It's all a huge upswing in young women, young girls, where it's not the same with boys. That means something's amiss, because if trans was what me and you are, it would be really very kind of level across the board.
Yeah,
It wouldn't favor women over men or men over women. The reason before there were more male to females was because it's who you saw. But many guys like me transitioned back in the day. You just didn't see us. We sort of just became
Yeah,
men and
I
went
did
into the
a I
world.
did a presentation about in my transgender studies class. I did a like presentation about Billy Tipton. You know, he was a
Great, great. Yep,
you know
sure do.
about Billy Tipton.
Of course. Yep,
I'm a
yep.
jazz musician, so I when I found
Oh,
out about him, I was
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I honestly have to think that it's kind of the next stage of there's I don't know if you've seen these memes or if it was something just my generation did, but I'm not like the other girls.
That's a meme.
That was a whole big thing going
Holy
around
crap.
in my when I was a kid, when I was in middle school, and even in high school. It's like I'm not like the other girls. I don't wear makeup. I read books. I like Harry Potter. You know that kind of thing. It's like
Okay,
the whole
okay.
I'm not like the other girls, and I feel like this is taking that another step further. It's like I'm not like the other girls because I'm not a girl.
Wow. How about, let me ask you this, my friend. Why do you think so many girls are feeling like they're not girls all of a sudden? Do you,
Well, honestly, I as I mentioned before, it was like trying to get my words here, but
yeah.
you know it was like for a while we were pushing that like oh you don't have to be super feminine all the time to be a woman, you know,
Mhm.
you can be a tomboy, and then now they're kind of pushing that oh if you don't fit into those if you don't fit into all these if you don't feel 100% female, like if you have masculine traits and you're not a woman. It's like they're kind of pushing that, and it's I feel like it's also that wanting to be special, wanting to be different, and it's kind of like
I completely agree with you.
because the not
Yeah.
like the other girls, like that whole group of people, they always had more masculine traits. Like they wore sweatpants,
Right.
they wore sweaters, and they didn't wear high heels or wear makeup. And I feel like that's just taking it another step to
Hmm.
say, oh, I have these masculine traits, therefore I must be
Be
non-binary.
male or non-binary, because we fought to get rid of those stereotypes, right? We actually fought so that girls could be butch and masculine and wear pants,
And
and
then
dudes
now it's
could.
regressing.
It's exactly right, my friend. I love hearing that from a younger generation.
It
Thank you
is
for saying that.
regressing. We are going back, but we are going back. It's like we're going back, but in a different direction. It's kind of weird. We're not going back as in we must enforce typical gender roles. We're going back as in a way where if you don't fit these gender roles, you must not be this gender. You must be non-binary or something like
Yes.
that.
It's very bizarre. Why would we do that? It's so regressive. It's so hurtful. It's so, I mean, why do you think we have so many I mean, really, they keep saying we don't have a lot of do you know how many detransitioners we have, my friend, growing? At least one a day. I'm telling you.
And I think a lot of detransitioners get either silenced or they don't speak up very
Well, there's
much
both. There's both
because
because I
they're so
deal
embarrassed. You know,
of course, because the community is so mean to them and they don't want to come out. I don't blame them. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't. But the ones who find the courage to, and I have interviewed, they, pretty much all of them have the same story. They felt lured into it. They felt like what you just said, that people were like sort of saying, well, if you're masculine as a woman, you must be trans. They said they got a lot of peer pressure
yeah,
to.
and like I noticed that at the beginning of my like when I started questioning, and that's why I think like I decided to take that time and like really like put it aside also so that way like I wanted to experience what it was like to be a quote unquote normal female in my first year of
Right.
college so that way I could really determine like what I felt.
Very smart. You're a smart kid. I'm telling you, you really took it seriously in a sense that you understood that there really is no turning back. There isn't. I mean,
Yeah,
if
because I mean also with my like depression like I also waited to figure out to be put on meds because I knew that would like mess me up, and it did mess me up for a while because I was
Mhm.
put on the wrong meds. And then but now that I have my meds figured out and now that I have like my testosterone, I've been the happiest. I've been super happy. I've never been happier. I'm sorry
Oh,
to
makes
hear
me
like
happy.
little my cat is her litter box I guess.
That's all right, kiddo. That's all right. I'm just so happy you're happy. This is a real transition here. This is somebody who actually needs the medicine, who actually does need to move forward in their life. And, and it has improved. The whole point of transition, my friend, as you know, is to improve your life, not to make you angry and disconnected and hateful,
Yeah,
which is what I see from this new trans activism. I see a disconnect. I see a bunch of angry people.
yeah, and like I've just seen like a lot of people feel like they feel miserable. They say, "Oh, I have depression and I'm non-binary," and it's like, oh, I've I've noticed that my depression has gotten better since I've been transitioning. You know, it's been easier to manage. And
Great. It's because you're taking care of yourself. Now, I think what's happening with the people who seem to be being more depressed as they get sucked into this non-binary trans is that they're not really non-binary trans. And on some level, they kind of maybe know it, and it's creating this sort of turmoil within themselves because they don't want to admit it. Because once they admit it, then they're sort of ostracized from the community for fear of rejection on
yeah,
some
because if
level.
they admit it, then they kind of like you get that backlash. And like I said, like
That's right.
I
That's right.
remember I was in a speech class, and we had to pick a topic for our speeches, or three speeches. We had to give an informational speech, a policy speech, and a call to action speech. And I decided to talk about different like the medical aspects of transgenderism. But like in my informational speech, I put the definition of transgender as someone who has like a transgender person is someone who has gender dysphoria, and to cure it transitions. And I was talking to like a fellow classmate about it, and I was reading my speech, and they said you may want to be careful with that definition. You could get in trouble with the school
Wait, what? What?
because
That's
the our class was teaching, like I said, the gender studies department. They don't believe that you need gender dysphoria to be trans.
God, I hope everybody out there hears this. This is the indoctrination. That is actual indoctrination because you do need gender dysphoria to be trans. That is actually the basis of transitioning, gender dysphoria. Why would you transition if you don't have gender dysphoria?
It's I don't know. I genuinely do not know. When I ask people, they say, "Oh, you need gender youth." Some people transition due to gender euphoria, which
That's
is
made
feeling
up.
better. But it's like, you can't feel better if something isn't wrong.
Right on. And that comes from the college student. Sorry,
Yeah, it's like,
dude.
yeah, and that's just what I've been seeing. Like we had to even I remember in my transgender studies class, we had to read through the DSM-5 entrance for gender dysphoria and like pick out quote unquote what was wrong with it, and it's like, or how
Wow.
that marginalizes people, and it's like
What? Marginal. First off, let me just say something here. As a 30 plus year transition person, I do not feel marginalized. Honestly, I don't. I do not. If these kids understood where we come from and what we had to put up with many years ago, I don't think people are seeing in this community what we actually have. They're only seeing we don't have. We have a lot. You kids can go have surgery in like a heartbeat. You can get your testosterone
yeah,
on the internet. You know, like it's so
exactly,
much.
and that I feel like people don't see that struggle, and like it's like
They
one of the
don't.
things that I've thought about is like if I if for example I was like your age, like would I have how long would it have taken would I have ever figured it out? How long would it have taken me to figure
That's
it out?
right.
And it's like I kind of determined, well, I was just sheltered. I didn't know what being trans was, but if I learned what it was, I probably would have put the two pieces together.
That's right.
And
That's right.
but I
But
feel a lot of people, they wouldn't have figured it out, or they would have just stayed cis. Or
they did. They actually did. Many people struggled. When I transitioned, I was with the gay women's community and they hated me. I got completely ostracized from that, which I understand looking back at it, but that's how rare it was. And it's always been on some level rare. This is rare. And all of a sudden now everybody is trans. And no, it doesn't
yeah,
work.
and I
It doesn't.
like I said, I know like in every class I go to, like every lecture, every class, there's always at least like two other trans people.
That is weird. I'm just telling you, it's weird. Why would anyone want to be trans? This is a situation me and you have to deal with for the rest of our lives. Testosterone surgery, walking the world this way. It's not, I feel happy, excuse me, as well as you do. But I'm pretty, for myself, I would have rather been born cisgender, to be honest with
Yeah,
you. Yeah, I
honestly,
don't,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, exactly, and like it's,
I don't.
I feel like I said, it's now become so popular, so like special. Like people now see it as like they see it as just like an accessory. Like my gender studies class said, you
Yeah.
see it, gender is how you decorate, or gender is the pants you wear.
It's so
Gender, your identity is how you decorate your pants.
Oh my God, they're just really, really indoctrinating these people. You just said it to me. You're just showing me exactly what we're teaching young people in colleges, and that the fact that this is even sort of
And
a
like I said, I had
thing.
to do that. I'm not a gender studies major. I did this class
Wow.
for it's
Yeah.
a class anyone can take for their general
Yeah.
studies credit. I had to do it for social studies.
Right. So anyone can take this. So let's just say some random kid goes in there and takes it. He could start easily hearing things that he might think he's or she's trans on, right? On some
Yeah,
level.
and
Yeah.
I know a bunch of people who say they're like, one of the things that really boggles me about this generation is the the arising of gender fluid.
That's right. That's right. Me too.
Because I've met so many gender fluid people, but they all like they say that, oh, I identify as masculine today. It's like, well, you're wearing pants. It's like, it's like I have a friend who's like always really presents female and says, oh, I'm thinking I'm gender fluid because I like to present masculine sometimes. And it's like, yeah,
Wow,
I
really?
yeah. It's like sometimes, I present more feminine, like sometimes I
Yeah,
present more masculine, but I know
that's
I'm a
right.
man.
And that shouldn't mean anything. I'm going to go right back to stereotypes. Here we are. We keep using these because you present more masculine. That doesn't mean anything, and it shouldn't even be a conversation. You should just present more masculine and walk the world that way. But you're right. There's something really amiss here. And every time I interview you young people, the more information gets into my head. And I'm going to keep saying that word, indoctrination. It really feels as if, some things are being put in these kids' heads that before we would just be like, okay, no big deal. You want to wear pants and you're a chick and no one cares. And you want to play sports and you know what I mean? And you want to be a truck driver and who cares? Why is that now making you, trans mask? There's this other thing, trans mask.
Yeah, it's
And
it's
mhm,
honestly like the trans mask, trans femme. It's kind of
yeah,
annoying, and
it's annoying.
the thing that
Mhm,
really bugs me too is the use of AFAB versus AMAB.
that's
That's
right.
kind of just
That's
that's
right.
just a step. Like they're literally just hiding. Like they're saying, "Oh, he's a woman," but
That's right.
they're just doing that as a more woke way. Saying,
That's
"Oh,
right.
he's
That's
AFAB."
right. No,
So
no, no.
you're
Of
still
course.
categorizing people as how they're born and seeing them as like a female, but you're just using that woke terminology.
I know it's, and also I wasn't assigned female. I'm very understanding of my biology, and I
Yeah,
know exactly that's why we're trans, dude. We're trans because of our biology. There's no
yeah.
other reason that you're trans. It's because you were born female or male, and you want to be a male or female. It's
And like I
pretty
said,
fucking
like
simple.
my they were teaching that what you were assigned at birth is based off of how the like it's not it's again like they were like saying it like, oh, it's a like kind of trying to phrase it like the doctors are evil and such, and I was like so
Wow.
mind boggled. And
I know. It's very culty. I'm telling you, this language is culty. They're trying to rearrange reality in your brain and say, well, no, the doctors are making mistakes here. Wow, really? You actually think for the last billion years or however old we are, right? Or how
yeah,
long medicine has been on the table, these doctors have been making mistakes. The other thing that I find, I don't know if you notice this, but even our history in the LGBT community is on some level being completely mistold. They're saying stuff like maybe a butch writer from the past who maybe was very masculine. They're now saying, well, they probably would have been trans or non-binary. So I'm going to write this article with them using the pronouns of they them. I thought, what? You can't
yeah,
change history on someone else's own identity. They're literally creating these people's identity for them.
yeah. And it's also I've seen kind of the reverse too. It's like, oh, this person was only identified as trans because of the time. Like I said, when I was doing research
Yeah,
about Billy Tipton, when
yeah,
I was doing my project in my transgender studies class about him, it
yeah.
was like people were saying, "Oh, he was only trans because that was only way he could play jazz in
What?
the in his
But how
era."
dare they tell his story? That's his story. You don't know that. Like,
Yeah, and
what?
it's like, well, if he was only trans because he was it was that time and era, he could have just had a stage persona. He could have
That's
just
right. I mean,
he got married to, he had a wife, he had 3 sons that he adopted. It's like he
that's
lived
right.
fully as a man, and no one knew until he
No
passed
one knew.
away.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so we don't know the reason why. Let's just respect that, he had gender dysphoria. I really do think so. And, we don't know. Maybe he did have to do it because of jazz, right? It was a very male dominated space. There's a lot of
Mhm.
females who had to present as male in order to do things in, history, right? Become doctors or lawyers because women couldn't. But does that not make them trans, or does that make, but we don't know the story. We don't know. I think we're creating these stories for these people and saying, well, he's
We're
only trans because he had to do this.
we're trying to project modern issues onto people in the past.
Right on. Excellent. You're a very smart kid. You are. You're a smart kid. And
Thank you.
you're smart. Well, you're, because you see things that, and also you're speaking up, which I'm going to tell you, I highly appreciate. Your voice is going to let people see what's happening. You're sort of in it, right? I'm not in it. You're in it. You're with the young people. You're
Yeah,
experiencing this whole thing. So I'm not, I have a different opinion because I'm sort of over here and I'm older and I see things from a more of a different perspective, but you're literally inside of this space. So it's why your story right now is so powerful, because you're
yeah.
actually witnessing and
Like my
seeing.
classmates, like I said, I just finished. I have to take one more like class from that gender and women's studies course just to finish, or from that department just to get some credits that I need for my degree. And it's like I'm going to talk to my advisor later and see if I even need to take that class.
Yeah. I wouldn't, I don't blame you. It must be frustrating being in that class.
Yeah,
It's,
that class I almost didn't pass it because it was attendance based, and I just hated showing up to it because
which
it was
is
always
so
so wild.
insane. You shouldn't even, I mean, on some level, it should be the history of trans in there. If you ever have a chance to get me any paperwork anonymously from there, I would just love to see some of the things they're testing you
Yeah,
on, or I would really highly appreciate that. I want to, and you don't have to put name or anything on it. I just want to see some of the
I think
work that's
I'll add
being.
this to the video, but I do think I'm still so Canvas is what we use post COVID to sort our classes. I think I may still be in the Canvas for my gender studies class,
That would be
and I
awesome,
could
dude.
probably grab some. Yeah,
That would be awesome. I really, I will not connect it to you in any way, shape, or form. I'll just use it in other way. Working with people, and we're doing a lot of studies, and we're sort of looking at what this, we believe it's a social contagion.
yeah. So I'm just kind of looking through what we had to what we had to like our modules. Here, can I turn on my camera for a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Many of these problems, I think, are coming from academia. I do think the
Mm-hmm.
academic world, it thinks of itself, first off, it's very egomaniac. And I think that they think they're the ones who are pushing out, they're the ones who are pushing out all this information. Nobody else. And then the whole world is kind of taking it on
Yeah.
but people forget it's called queer theory. Don't people understand what theory is? Theory is just somebody's opinion. That's all it
Right.
is. It's not fact. It's none of that's fact based.
Yeah, I understand. And let's see.
It's so bizarre that they're teaching you this stuff. I mean, as a parent, and I have a 10-year-old, and when he gets to university, I hope this shit is gone.
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
it's useless. Dude,
even
can you tell
now
me
that
why?
like
Why would this be taught? What is the usefulness of this? Where is this going to take you in the world?
I do not know. Like I said, it was just like like I said, I looked up how who these people who get this degree, what jobs could they get? They can get a job as a professor.
That's right.
And
You
that's
said that
really
in the
what I
beginning.
saw, and I was like, what?
That's right. That's right.
And they
Degree.
get
You're right.
paid like about the
Nothing.
same as like my partner who's an electrical engineer.
That's right. I don't, but the thing that's so bizarre is they have a gender studies degree, which you can only use to go back into teaching gender studies. You can't, there's nothing else you could do with that degree on some
Underwater
level.
basket weaving.
Totally. Don't shame basket weavers.
Yeah.
My God, we're living in South Park.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, how much university is not cheap. It's expensive. So you're
Right.
gonna be stuck with a loan to pay off for gender studies.
Yeah. Have
And
fun
then
paying
what?
that off at
Have
McDonald's.
fun paying that off. Have fun getting a job somewhere. It's gonna take you. That's why the whole thing is sad to me, dude. I'm laughing because it's just so absurd. But
And people who make this their entire personality and they're all everything they only focus about. It's kind
that's
of like
right.
what other
That's
things,
right.
what other skills do you have? What it's like if you can't really do much with this except like
Nothing. You
yeah,
can't you can't do nothing. And that's what I keep telling these kids. My God, you have such opportunities to do so many great things. And your identity means nothing to nobody gives a shit about your identity when you go fucking try to get a job. They want
yeah.
are you gonna
That's like
work?
why I kind of put being trans and being bi off to the side and like said I
That
focus on the aspects like me being a musician, like you know
and that you're a smart kid and that you have
yeah
interest
like
in the world.
yeah like I put like my skills up front like actual personality things that I like and my personalities rather than just I don't tell people when I first meet them, oh, I'm trans. Well, I know
of,
people who do.
of course, I see it all the time. I mean, they have all that shit in their bios, right? A billion flags and 75
Every
different
pronoun
identities.
pins. Have you my
Oh,
there was the clubs that would hand out different flag pins that you put on your pack.
I can't take it. That just feels indoctrination to me. It just
Yeah, like
does. It feels
where you have
very
like a trans
cult.
pin on your bag or the bi pin on your bag, and it's like, well, the only pin I'd have on my bag is like the one that says "I'd walk with you," like the one with
Right
my.
on.
It's like I was like, I've learned that ever since transitioning, I kind of seem more intimidating as a man than as I was as a woman. It's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
still want to give that friendly demeanor.
That's right. No, I hear you. I mean, people look at how I look, dude. Some people make a lot of comments about, or people get very weird when I'm walking down the street. Like, what? Like, but that's I never tell people I mean, people know it, but I don't walk and meet somebody and say I'm trans. But that's the difference between us. We want to be men and women and walk the world that way. These kids want to be trans and tell the whole world they are, and they want some kind of brownie points for it. Or I feel like it's just this sort of way to get accolades now. It's not about
Yeah,
transitioning to deal with your dysphoria, which is the
it's
reason you
more
transition,
transitioning to be special.
which is
You get
weird. And that's why these conversations are important, because we're getting lumped into that, my friend, which is making my life harder. I'll be honest. I have an awesome life as a transsexual guy. I don't complain about anything. There's so many great things about it, but I feel like this newer trans activism is really making my life so difficult now. I've never felt so much hate, honestly.
yeah, and also just kind of the misogyny is kind of coming or like misandry.
Oh, it's so true. Both.
I meant yeah,
Both.
I'm like misandry. Like people are saying
Yep.
like they blame men and stuff for all their problems, and it's like, well,
Unbelievable.
that's why, like I said, I had to come out and like out myself at my gender studies class
Yeah.
because I was the only white guy in that class.
Wow, dude, that must have been uncomfortable for you. Holy crap.
But
Wow.
like I
Yeah.
said, like even I have feminine like it's like I understand that I have both masculine and feminine traits. Hell, like my phone
Yeah.
case is pink because I has little cat paws because we all have like feminine and masculine traits, but it's just like focusing too much on that, you will eventually just say, oh, I guess I'm not feminine or masculine because I have both these traits. It's like
Yeah.
everyone has those.
Everyone, dude, even me, as high or masculine as I try to be, I still have female things, and I'm okay with that. And I
Yeah, like
acknowledge
one
my
of my friends,
biology.
like super masculine guy, like he tells me that he loves to sew, he loves to bake.
Yeah, right on.
And like
Excellent. That
I know some like really super feminine women who can out talk me in sports
that's right.
or
Me too.
hunting.
So that's the stereotypes again. We're just regressing so no, bad. It's hurting
Mhm.
people. It really is. It's hurting young people. So we're gonna close here in a minute, and I just want to thank you, Em. You're such a beautiful human. I can feel your love, and I can really feel your desire to really talk about the truth to help people. And we
And it
need
is an
more.
honor talking to you. Like
Thank you.
it's like so you're one of my role models that like I
Oh,
look up
sweet.
to with like transitioning and
Thank
such
you.
like that.
Thank you, friend. That means a lot to me. And I'm here for you as, as your Tranpa and
Cool.
as an elder. I care about you kids a lot. I really do. And it's why I have these conversations, because I don't want kids to get in a situation where they never should have been, dude. But I can tell you're solid. I can just tell that you're on your path and you're happy and you're very
Yeah.
grounded. And that's what I want the world to see. I need for people to see that real trans people exist and real young people exist. They do. And M is one of those people who has changed his life, and he'll end up having a great life like I do because of the transition. And that's why
Yeah.
you're speaking out.
As like I said, I've noticed that transitioning just as I used to, like a couple years ago, I was in and out of the mental hospital. Then, like
Yeah.
ever since I started testosterone, I haven't been back to the hospital.
There you go. That's so profound. And that's what it's supposed to do. It's not, and you sound happy. You don't sound angry. You don't sound
Yeah,
like you're mad at cisgender people.
yeah. I'm just like I said, it's just being lumped in with all this. It just kind of
Yep,
disheartens me,
it is. I thank
and I
you.
can't speak out about it to people my age, or else they'll shun me.
I hope you all hear that. This guy cannot say something different than the narrative, or they'll shun him. That is really so wrong on so many levels, where how we've gotten here. I remember when you could have pushback from your friends a little and not agree, right? I like this sports team, you like that one, it's all good, you know what I mean? Now it's like you'll totally get ostracized from your community, which is unhealthy.
Yeah,
And so thank you, Em, for your time and your energy and your caring and all of those things. And we won't put anything there, but people will probably hopefully leave a lot of great comments, and I'm sure they will, because people here are so awesome.
yeah.
And I'm leave Em a lot of love. Do you want to say anything before we go?
My advice, is just keep living life, and honestly, you got to think about what makes you happy, and you
Right
got to
on.
do a lot of self. Life isn't easy to get through and figure out yourself. You have to do a lot of like I've had to, even recently I've been doing like a lot of like internal like thinking about like who I am, what I like. It's like, but you just got to keep trucking through. It does get
Right
better.
on. It does. Thank you for saying, and you know what? Thank you for saying that self-reflection is so important in this journey, and really understanding why you're doing this and in the road you're about to take. So with that, everybody, please leave him some love and some beautiful comments. Stepped up to the plate, which is what we need in order to get back to some sanity around all of this. And like, subscribe, do all those things. I really do appreciate it. And I'll see you on the next interview. Thank you.